Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Cranked and Ranked. That's right, the podcast or YouTube video series that you love with your two friends who rank things, band discographies, or like today, sometimes we do our top 5 or 10 favorite albums of a particular year. And this particular year that we're going to be talking about is 30 years ago, 1992. So wow. We're going to be doing our top 10. I'm getting over a cold, folks, so bear with me. So our top 10 albums of 1992. What are you doing?
I'm checking the cardioid on the mic. I'm making sure it's the right one. I forgot I was on camera.
From the point of view of the camera for the people that are watching on or listening on a podcast, it's like he was about to fillet me.
I charge extra for that.
Oh shit. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, Cranked and Ranked is the podcast. I'm your host, or I don't co-host. The guy who does the intros. Old Head or Steven. With me as always, Jesus, Eddie Sparxx.
Sup?
Top 10 of 1992. This one was fucking hard. That's what she said.
Whew. Damn straight.
So like we narrowed it down to a top 10. I had to leave out some of my favorite albums. Narrowing it down to a top 10. And then you said you brought along some honorable mentions, which I didn't do, but you'll probably be mentioning some of mine. But I just had to leave them. I had to cut it down to 10 and go and walk away, because otherwise I'd be postponing this episode for like weeks and be like, look, it's not quite ready yet. So because 1992 is chock full of amazing albums. And yeah, we might as well just jump right into it, because I feel like we're going to have a lot to say about a lot of these, because I think you and I both really love this particular year. And we're going to be talking about some of the same albums. I know 3 probably off the top of my head, 4 for sure that I think are going to be on both our lists. We'll see if I'm right. Let's 1992. I was 13 going on 14.
I was -6. Like this is a real strong year music-wise, because genre-wise, everything I love was at something of a peak, you know? The glam bands were still making albums that had the big 80s production. Grunge bands were putting out their strongest stuff. Thrash bands were going into that really cool, you know, it's probably not a good way to word it in a thrash sense, but the radio-friendly thrash era is just something I adore, because I love the fact you got the heaviness, but you also got the hooks. And, you know, that middle ground right there, that is like, if I was music, that's what I'd sound like, is just this era. Yeah.
It was a big deal for me, because it was a big year of really beginning to discover music, because like I had already discovered things, and usually it was like on accident, or I just saw it on MTV. But I think by the time I was 13, I really started to dig in to like magazines and whatnot. But yeah, it's really when I started to like realize that, you know, I love heavy music. I love thrash metal. I also love this new shit that I've discovered that's like the alternative rock and grunge sound. You know, very soon after that, I would get into even heavier things, and all along still being into like hip hop and stuff like that, which like all that music was thriving in 92. So this will be fun. So let's just fucking let's jump into our top 10, because like I'm really curious to see where we're gonna meet up, because there's a few that for sure I know are on your list. So let's do it.
Cool. I just want to state for the record, just before we begin, because it is such a huge part of my life and basically shaped my personality. The fact that 1992 is 30 years ago means the events of GTA San Andreas are set 30 years ago.
Oh,
When the game came out in 2004, the events would have been 12 years ago.
yeah.
I was 6. And I just think it's fucked up that through the passage of time, the game itself is closer to that time period than we are now to the game's release. You know? That's wild.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Mm. We old as shit. But yeah.
I mean, one of us is getting up there.
Let's dive in.
All right, do it. Let's do. What's your number 10 release of 1992?
My number 10 album of 1992 is the self-titled debut of Rage Against the Machine.
All right.
Holy shit balls, this record
Yeah.
is it. Not only is it awesome from start to finish, but it means a lot to me, because
it's so interesting that you mentioned the album, and it is one of those albums. You know, when you think about certain albums, the first notes of the album immediately start playing in your head. So you're like, Rage Against the Machine, and my brain goes,
yeah.
Like, yep, there it is.
Oh man, like the thing about this in particular was the fact that it perfectly bridged the gap of me previously being a rap fan transitioning into heavy music. And so I'd heard Du Hast by Rammstein and Cigaro by System of a Down through, various means, Guitar Hero, the internet and whatnot. And I eventually just started hearing this stuff and thinking, this is really cool. I want to check this out. Well, after a while, me being about 11 and listening to a little bit too much Eminem, a little bit too proudly, to the point where I knew like every word and started to know what like every word meant. My mom was kind of like, okay, I gotta put some sanctions on this shit. Like so I was only allowed to like really listen at the time to some of the tamer Eminem stuff. But speaking of that, that's kind of a timely reference for America on the day that we're recording this, because today in America is a thing called the Super Bowl. Oh shit!
And which is something I don't give two fucks about. But the halftime show is like Dr. Dre, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, Kendrick Lamar. That's other people. I quite remember everybody. That alone is enough for me to go like that. That's definitely something I'd like to watch. Do I have a television channel that will pick that up? No, I got to wait for somebody to post it on YouTube tomorrow or whatever. But yeah, so you're gonna, it's, and that it just popped into my head. I'm like, yeah, that'll be an interesting thing because honestly, I don't care about football. I rarely care about who's playing the halftime show. And so I'm like, well, this seems pretty damn cool. But it also brings with it that really funny thing where in America, it seems like, now I'm not talking about all of you, I'm talking about just a select large number of you, seem to be okay with the fact that Black people are playing the game that's entertaining you. But when it comes to the halftime show, we would rather not have any Black people.
Oh man,
there's a lot of that on the internet, which is really funny. And oh well, let's move on. Let's get back to Rage Against the Machine.
So yeah, the as I was saying, it's a great bridge for people who like hip hop to get into heavy music and
absolutely, yeah,
appreciate like the grooviness of how like heavy a riff can be and stuff like that, because so much of this album could have just been like a hip hop song,
Yeah.
but it boldly went in a band direction instead of, sticking to the standard thing.
Yeah, and
And
that's why I always get bummed out when people call it rap metal, because I'm like, yeah, there is rap
mm,
metal, but this is just like a rap band.
mm,
They play Rage Against the Machine music, like
that
other
happens
stuff.
to be heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. It never, like, when they started saying rap metal, I was like, oh, I get that. That's like, you
Mm,
know, that just seems like stuff that would come later on that was full on rap metal. But
yeah.
obviously they were directly influenced by Rage Against the Machine. But I think it's unfair to label Rage as rap metal.
Yeah. Because, like, they're, and this is not me discrediting rap metal as a genre, but
Yeah,
there's a certain creativity and breaking the boundaries of what your very instrument can do with Rage Against the Machine, is, in the guitar department, is that, Tom Morello turned around and said, there's enough shredders in this world. I'm gonna make my guitar sound like a G-Funk sample, like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, I love that. And my friend Dan, who I went to college with, his favorite band is Rage Against the Machine, last I checked, and Tom Morello is his favorite guitarist. And I don't blame him one bit, because, like, god damn it, the dude he's undeniably, when you hear Tom Morello play, even if it's like the weirdest fucking sound he's making at the time, it's him.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's great, and I think he's a great guitar player. He's a lot. I think a lot of people always try to point out, we're like, what he plays isn't necessarily hard. He uses a lot of pedals, and I'm like, well, that's not the point. Like,
Yeah.
he never came and said, listen to the really intricate, difficult
Yeah.
stuff I'm playing. Like, he just
Write the next Know Your Enemy, asshole.
it's
Exactly.
just a vibe. Like, he gets the vibe across that's needed for these songs, and it's like he writes some riffs that, if you break them down, they're really simple but really effective. So that's the mark of a great guitarist for me.
And shred doesn't necessarily translate to good or memorable, which is
that's very true.
Which is what this entire album is just memorable, heavy, groovy stuff.
Yeah.
And yet it's one of those albums that is both incredibly socially conscious, but you could still fucking party to it. Like,
yeah, which is probably why a lot of people don't even realize they were ever political.
Yeah. Yeah. Tom Morello should stop indoctrinating his fans on Twitter. And it's like, have you never read the lyrics at all?
If I've learned anything over the years, it's that lyrics are completely meaningless to most listeners. So
it's mouth sounds.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a killer album. I'm gonna look at the track list in here real quick. Bomb track, Killing in the Name, Take the Power Back. Like, that in itself is a trio of just ass kicking. Settle for Nothing, Bullet in the Head, Know Your Enemy, Wake Up. Wake Up is my alarm in the morning, but I edited my own version in Logic, so it starts at the exact point he goes, wake up!
Nice.
Yeah. And, like, even the deeper you get into this album, it's so consistent, but it has still so much to give you,
And it ends on arguably the strongest song on the album.
Oh, freedom!
I mean, that's a fucking ender right there. Like, that just demolishes everything. You might as well not listen to another album after that.
Yeah. Is it Fistful of Steel or Township Rebellion that has that kick-ass cowbell part in it? I love that as well.
That's Freedom.
Is it in Freedom? Oh, yeah.
Because remember, it stops and he does the "Anger is a Gift." He does that. That's part.
The one.
Although his voice is a little higher. He hasn't been sick for a week.
I've probably mentioned this on the show, but I have a funny story to tell about Know Your Enemy. Is my mother was knocked out in a mosh pit to that song.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, there was a rock club called the Bauji in Newquay, which was like, it still kind of is like where everybody goes to kind of party in this county.
Yeah.
It's a very coastal town. There's like clubs and that, but during the early 90s, the Bauji was the place to go if you were a rocker, and that place had a fucking killer playlist from what I know. But there was a dude in like an American flag painted on the back, denim vest, long hair, Wayne's World gasworks looking motherfucker. And he was just like going absolutely crazy. And the last thing I think she said she saw was just this blonde mop flying at her face. And then she woke up outside the club on her back with the bouncer basically reviving her. But I just love the fact that like that had to have had some sort of, you know, genetic influence eventually.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say she was at a Rage Against the Machine show, which would have been even cooler. But you know, it's the sentiment, I guess, of it all.
Hey, if you're knocked out to a song, you're knocked out to a song.
That's true. That's true. I've never been knocked out to any song, so you know, I can't even say that.
I've passed out to a song, but you know that was just drinking. But yeah, okay. That's my number 10. Rage Against the Machine, self-titled.
So I actually, for the benefit of our viewers on the YouTube side of things, I actually just brought my vinyl for all of them, all of my top 10, just for a little visual niceness. But I think you'll see, because you that was a pretty good start. That's a pretty strong number 10, and you'll probably agree that my number 10 is also very strong. You'll probably think it's too low, but this is what I'm working with here for my number 10. My number 10 is Countdown to Extinction by Megadeth.
Nice.
And I'm just, hello, look, this is the record, Countdown to Extinction. You can't see it at home, but this is
the rear cover.
It's an OG copy, so it's none of this. Like I always have to say when I talk about anything Megadeth, fuck any reissues that have ever been done. Even the more recent remaster where they didn't fuck it up quite so much, it's still brick-walled and sounds awful. Stop that shit. So anyway, Countdown to Extinction. It's just a really great. It's like it does what you were saying about the thrash metal bands just started to make metal music.
Mm-hmm.
There's thrash elements on Countdown to Extinction, but I don't know. I love the grooviness that was brought together with Nick Menza, and it's all over that album. And it's got fucking classics. Fucking, what's that one song? Symphony of Destruction.
Yeah.
That one. And then one of my favorite Megadeth songs, Architecture of Aggression.
Oh.
Not to mention Sweating Bullets and
I might as well say this now. It's my number 9, so we can just slam this part.
Wow, I thought it would be higher for some reason.
Here's the thing. I love this album.
Yeah.
But I like, in case anybody hasn't heard the Megadeth episodes we did, check those out too. But I'm a big fan of the 90s stuff as they would progress.
Yeah.
And I do love this album, not as much as some of their other 90s output. But yeah, don't worry. It's not below risk.
Good. But I just love, and I love the way the album sounds. I think that's the biggest reason I got so bent out of shape about the remixes, because Rust in Peace and Countdown to Extinction to me sound perfect. There's that perfect range of dynamics to where you can turn it up really fucking loud and it still sounds amazing. Whereas they changed it to this thing where you turn it up loud and you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
It's just amateurs trying to fuck with shit that, and I think this is Max Norman that did this too. Yeah. Produced by Dave Mustaine and Max Norman, which Max Norman, I think worked with all kinds of bands, from hair bands to what
Mm.
have you. But
Hey
it's
Norm, crank the knobs.
anyway, it's a great sounding album. I love every song on it. But I had to go with my gut with a lot of these, and that one just ended up being at number 10.
Yeah.
It hurt a little bit, but I think like I said to you earlier, like I just had to like put them in the order that felt okay and then walk away from it, because I would
you could spend the rest of your life rearranging this list, because
probably it's not worth it,
because none of it would be wrong with the amount of fire that came out of this year.
Absolutely. So yeah, so your thoughts on Countdown to Extinction?
I mean, you can tell that there is something of a, their answer to the Black Album thing, but all of the thrash bands were doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it, stripping back a bit and actually ushering in my preferred era of Megadeth. I would include Rust in Peace in because I just love that lineup.
Yeah.
Of the two Daves and Menza and Friedman, like that's peak Megadeth to me. But like, you got Skin in My Teeth, Symphony of Destruction, Foreclosure of a Dream, like that groove in that song, like, still gets me to this day. Sweating Bullets was the first Megadeth song I ever heard, and it was on Guitar Hero 5.
Interesting.
And that's the thing. I remember hearing it and I was like, this is like heavy, but it's like bluesy in a weird way with like a really crushing breakdown. Like, and Ashes in Your Mouth. What a great closer.
That is a great closer.
I love the like, part. And that really kick-ass acoustic solo part in High Speed Dirt.
Yeah.
I look forward to that moment on the album just because it's so sassy. Like, well,
see, that's the one thing I love about that era of a lot of those bands, that they just did shit that they didn't even necessarily have to do. They were just like, here's an idea. Let's do it, because we can do whatever we want. We're not tied to these rules that everyone seems to be so crazy about. And that's
when I'm on the mic, I can say whatever I want to.
But yeah, I think the best music comes about when you're not trying to play by somebody else's rules. And so that's when albums like Countdown to Mike, is it so hard to say that? Countdown to Extinction is a good album.
So yeah, that's your number 10, my number 9. So I'm just bouncing straight back over to you.
All right, on to my number 9. My number 9, moving out of the metal, move into the punk rock world.
Oh,
I absolutely love this album. God, okay. I can't, when I think about my placements, I'm all like, this is 9. Okay. The album is White Trash, Two Heaves and a Bean by NoFX. My favorite NoFX album. And it is fucking awesome. That's what I'm going to say about all of these, because it's NoFX at the era of NoFX that I love the most. They did 2 albums in an EP that to me were like the perfect combination of what they were doing, because they got this new guitar player. Well, on Rib they had an older guitar player, but then they got this guy El Jefe as the guitar player, and they were almost like crossover thrash punk, which I'm sure that they would hate that, but that's why it appealed to me, because it's not just I have a mohawk and I sing with a snarl and I hate everybody. It's not that kind of punk, which, later on NoFX would get a little more simplified with what they did, and I don't like it as much, although I still am a fan. But this point here, where they were still being pretty damn technical for a band that claims to not be very good, and it's such a varied album, so many different interesting styles. Once again, a band not playing by the rules. They're not trying to sound just basic punk. And that's why I love it. And that's why it's my number 9. Yeah. White Trash, 2 Heaves, and a Bean.
I need to really catch up on No Effects. So I guess we'll do an episode on them at least this year, hopefully.
Sure, we can do that. I think the 2 bands of that era that I would really like to do is either No Effects or Propagandhi.
Cool.
But either one, I'd be perfectly happy to talk about because I love both those bands.
Nice. Cool. So my number 8 is an absolute game changer. Vulgar Display of Power by Pantera.
Awesome.
Does it get more revolutionary in early 90s metal than Vulgar Display of Power? Like, maybe, you could lump Cowboys from Hell in with that too. Yeah, the Black Album also is like massively successful, but like when it comes to influencing what would come after it, there is no denying Vulgar Display of Power's power over the listener, because
it definitely had a huge influence on what was to come.
Yeah, because it has what would be thrash songs but played at this like tempo where it's almost kind of like danceable, and there's always that Philip H. Anselmo quote, and Philip H. Anselmo here. I've been in every fucking band. I can tell you, Pan fucking Terror is second to fucking none, motherfucker. Heroin needle in my goddamn dick. But like why don't we just make every song the Money riff? And
I love so to be fair, your Dave Mustaine and your Phil Anselmo are kind of crossing over.
Yeah, it's gonna turn into Daveville Anselmstein eventually.
Mustaine.
They'll eventually become one entity and swallow humanity into a giant hive mind.
That combo name that I made up sounded kind of dirty. Phil Mustaine.
Phil Mustaine. Oh, dude. I smell a fan fiction. Oh God. But yeah. This album, dude, like from the very moment it opens, like you can tell that they've shifted gears once again, because Cowboys still has residual 80s qualities, even though it has moved to that groove feel. It's still very 1980s in its production, and I'm a big fan of that, but I understand why Vulgar Display of Power hit different, was because it still sounded big, it still had space, reverb in places, but it was fucking tight as a nun's asshole where it needed to be,
Yeah.
And some of the moments on this, like, my God, like just looking at side A of this alone, Mouth for War, A New Level, Walk straight up is the prime example of simple but incredibly effective. Fucking Hostile is basically a thrash song, but it still has that hard hitting, kind of clicky drums, real punch in the fucking face feel to it. Then you get This Love, which, in a strange way, it's like kind of the most brutal ballad of all time. Like where it's spooky and mysterious and smooth, but then it kicks off, and you've not only got that part, but then the breakdown.
Yeah.
Like in this song, it is Domination will always be the bar. To which, metal breakdowns are judged. But the one in This Love, the dun 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 dun, just like proved that slow could be just as cool.
But they play that breakdown one time, and then they play it slower the second time.
Oh, it's brutal in
Yeah.
the truest sense of the word. Rise kicks ass. No good. Attack the Radical. I mean, awesome. Live in a hole. Regular people. Conceit. This is a two bracket songs album. By Demons Be Driven. One of the like most boss moments I have ever felt in my life. Like everybody else probably thought I was an asshole, but like when I first got my new car and it wasn't a piece of shit, I stuck on By Demons Be Driven and drove through like where I live, cranked, just blasting it like, I have a new fucking car, fuckers.
Yeah.
You guys can't pick on me anymore for owning a Vauxhall Corsa that had basically rotted away. And then I was just driving through the streets like like I was like mad into Pantera during a time in second year of uni.
Yeah.
And the all of my girlfriend's flatmates could hear me like a mile away going, like before they even heard the engine of the car coming down the street. Like even if I had my windows up, they were like, oh, Will's coming. Just announce my return. And then of course you got Hollow, which is somehow like this touching, heartfelt power ballad which goes into absolute insanity. And it's like, it's got a few remnants of its era, but it stands out as timeless, I think, you know, because you can pretty much point to any modern metal band and you can trace a lot back to what Pantera did in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's so wild to think when you hear something like This Love, to think they started out as pretty much just like a Def Leppard sort of early Def Leppard sort of thing.
Yeah. A lot of people don't like to think about that. Which is interesting. That's why I always found it so funny. Like you don't see it as much anymore, so it makes me happy, but people used to do these things where they'd make these huge collection of thrash metal logos and they would put Pantera on there and it'd be like, what you're telling me, if you're putting Pantera on a list with thrash metal bands, it means you ignore everything except about 10 songs, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, straight up.
And so, you know, luckily it's not there. But we'll talk about them more because I have a feeling. Is that one we're planning on doing this year? Is Pantera in the works?
It's coming. It's coming.
Yeah, because we really need.
We won't tell you when.
I'm surprised we haven't talked about them already. That seems like one that's we should already have dove into, but we will, folks. We will
for sure.
That'll be exciting. Are you done with Vulgar Display?
I'm done with VDOP.
All right, cool. I'd see the variety of stuff on here is interesting and shows why 92 was such a great year. Another band that we already did. We did a ranking of this band really early on, but this one had to be in my list. And this is my number. Are we on number 8 now? No, my number 8. America's Least Wanted by Ugly Kid Joe. This is a very personal choice because if you really wanted to be technical and picky about like songwriting and all of this stuff, you could point out a whole lot of flaws about not only Ugly Kid Joe, I guess, in certain respects, but also that album, America's Least Wanted. But I talked about it on our ranking. This was like, you know, if I was going to make a list of albums that sort of defined me in high school, like America's Least Wanted is one of those albums. Same. And I still really enjoy it. It's one of the few albums that from beginning to end just sort of transports me back to being young. And that's a thing that I feel like I should if I ever meet, you know, anyone from Ugly Kid Joe, I'd be like, thank you for like giving me that, because there's other music that I love from when I was young that doesn't have that effect on me, but America's Least Wanted absolutely does. It just from note 1 of Neighbor, I'm just like, oh my God, it's like, it just has that feeling. And it's just, it's just a really fun album. It's got, it's some people like to turn up their nose at the Cats in the Cradle the cover, but I always looked at it as like, once again, they were a band not playing by anybody's rules. So like,
damn right.
Why wouldn't they do that? Because they're not just a band that like, I think they're unnecessarily viewed as like a band that was all jokey all the time, which they weren't. They had jokey elements, some jokey songs, but then they had songs that were just flat out serious songs. And they didn't care if they could be funky on one song, metal on another song, do a cover of fucking Cats in the Cradle on another song. Yeah, it's a very important album for me, and I still love it to this day. But because of the strength of all the other shit from 1992 that I chose, it ended up being my number 8. So there you go, Ugly Kid Joe.
That album is it's perfect, and it will be appearing again in this episode.
I had a feeling.
Yeah. Because that is a defining record of my teen years. God damn. I'm super happy it made it to your list, dude.
Also, I don't know if I've ever shown you this, but if you look, the track listing on the album on the vinyl is different. It goes from Neighbor to Come Tomorrow. Goddamn Devil is until side 2.
Wow. Yeah, and Busy Bee is like super early.
Busy Bee, yeah. Panhandling Prince, Busy Bee. Yeah, it's a little bit. Some of it is the same, but it's switched around a little bit, and I have no idea why.
The big one for me. Oh, sorry, you go first.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, the amount of versions of the album of 1987 by Whitesnake, the amount of different track lists that album has is ridiculous. Like, I think I've got a CD, cassette, and 2 separate vinyl copies, and they're all completely fucking different.
Yeah, I always try to figure it out, because a lot of albums, especially from the early 90s, I found the track listing will be different, or there'll be songs completely left off of them. And sometimes obviously it's for running time because albums got longer, but in this case they just switched them around, and I'm like, well, none of their songs are necessarily super long, so they didn't need to switch them around because one side was longer. I have no idea. But either way, it's cool because it's like a different experience with the album. You can listen to it on CD, or your streaming service is one way and vinyl in another way. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So it's awesome.
Number 7.
Number 7. My number 7 is probably what I view to be the most underrated album on my list. It's a deep cut. The Lizard by Saigon Kick.
Nice. That is a good one.
This, and there's a reason for this, and it's pretty much the same reason Ugly Kid Joe are here too. You got hair metal, you got groove metal, you got alternative, and they're all coexisting. This is the 90s we could have had if the Suits didn't fuck the 80s bands, you know?
Yeah. I mean the fucking what's the song called? I can't remember the second song on the album. That one is a fucking grunge song.
Yeah. Like, where are we at? Hostile Youth.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Oh, like, just looking. I remember when I first heard this album. I think I was driving to uni, and I had a playlist that I just stuck a bunch of albums in, and I shuffled it. And at the time, I wasn't really. I was deep into the kind of glam thing, so I wasn't really looking for anything grungy. But this album just hit different for some reason, and I figured it out. It's because it nailed both down the middle, and it gave me the feeling that it gave me the same feeling I got when I first heard Ugly Kid Joe, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's that feeling again."
Yeah,
it's been years since I felt this, and now I have another one of these bands from this era with this vibe. And the album's pretty lengthy too. It's got a decent amount of songs on it, and it rules. Like, this is one of those long albums, about 54 minutes.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't ever get boring though, because they switch it up. I mean, they go from grunge to Beatlesque to a fucking power ballad essentially. It's like an acoustic one, but still, you know.
Yeah. Also, Cold Chamber has a lot to answer for because Body Bags is like the riff from Loco is Body Bags.
There there are a lot of great examples of bands in the later in the 90s who I guess heard stuff and those bands didn't go anywhere and like, well, we can nick that riff, I guess. And then there are people like me shaking their fists like, you need to give them some credit, you assholes.
But there's just something so cool about this album. Plus it's my favorite color, green. So hell yeah.
Yep.
Good artwork always helps. But this sort of sound, I feel deserved to stick around longer than it did.
Yeah.
Because almost every moment on this album is a 10 out of 10 to my ears.
Yeah.
And like, oh my God, I remember the first time I heard this. And even now, when I stick it on, I'm like, good God, what absolute perfection. Like, it's like they looked into my mind and it was like, okay, Eddie, what do you want to hear? This.
Yeah.
Straight up.
Well, I think that, I don't really, I mean, obviously the album did fairly well because Love Is on the Way was a hit. It was, it was played on MTV a lot. But I feel like with a lot of these bands, like if you were too varied, you got lumped in with one side or the other. And unfortunately, bands like Ugly Kid Joe and Saigon Kick got lumped into the uncool side of things. Even Extreme, in my opinion, was unfairly moved to the uncool side of things. But I guess that makes it makes a little bit more sense with Extreme. But so it sucks. But that's the one thing that I don't miss. Like, we talk about how great and varied the music was, and and the people that I knew, we were into whatever. But there was a growing amount of people, some of them who were actually in bands, who started to draw a line where all of a sudden, you would see live performances and all it was bands talking shit about other bands. And I'm like, don't fucking do this. Just play your goddamn music and shut up. Like I would rather you, like, I'm one of those people, like, I'm perfectly fine with you having a political opinion. Get up there and tell me you're voting for president. Let me know like how you feel about gay marriage and whatnot. I don't care. Just let me know. But if you're just going to talk shit about other bands, you look like an asshole. So just, even if they're a band that I agree is shit, just shut up. So
yeah, I feel like there comes a point, and this even happened to me. I'm not going to turn around and say I didn't have my shithead elitist phase, because I think everyone at some point, you believe that your music taste is gospel at some stage, even if it like happened briefly. For me, it would have been to an extent in college, but that had gone pretty much in the last the first kind of year of uni, where I realized the world doesn't revolve around me. Really now it's like no one's forcing me to listen to Pierce the Veil, so why should it bother me that Pierce the Veil exists? Yeah.
That's why I just don't say anything about it, because I'm just like, there's so much music that I don't like, and I would have to create an entirely different channel where I just talk about the hundreds of bands that I think are bad.
But you want to know something funny about this album is that my favorite song of all of this album, and this is me as a metalhead, All I Want is my favorite song on this album. That really trippy kind of ballady one.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a well-written, anthemic, vibey thing. And it's just...
Yeah.
It fits perfectly, but I can't quite place why. I mean, this band is kind of like if you took, Alice in Chains and Jane's Addiction, some heavier kind of grungy and groove metal kind of tendencies, but gave it the hooks of the hair metal stuff.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like it's like a recipe I cooked up. But it kicks ass. The Lizard by Saigon Kick, my number 7. Yeah,
So
7.
far, so far, we're either agreeing. We're either, you're either talking about albums that I'm talking about, or albums that I go, absolutely, it should be on this episode. All right, so God damn it, we're getting into so much good shit. I'll just go to it. My number 7. Is that where we're on 7? I get so lost. The self-titled album by King's X,
Hey.
which is their fifth album. Yeah. Or was it 4th? Fuck, I don't remember. My brain is not doing well right now. But this album is great. Whenever we get around to talking about the King's X discography, this will be one that I come to and say, well, they were kind of still doing the same King's X kind of thing. They weren't varying it up too much. But as an album on its own, it's got so much good shit on it. Yeah. So many great songs on it. It's got the song Junior's Gone Wild, which would appear in the Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey soundtrack.
Nice.
Also the single Black Flag that came out from this album. But it's one of those things that if you know King's X, it sounds like a King's X album. It's produced very similarly to the King's X albums that came before it. And they're just an amazing band. And this is one of those albums that it still puts together all the things I love about how they can have really heavy, down-tuned type shit with Beatlesque harmonies. I hate the term Beatlesque, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
On top of it. And, odd time signatures are just interestingly written songs. They kind of created their own thing real quick. And it's interesting that this album kind of came out in 92 and wasn't really embraced at a time when bands that were directly influenced by King's X were experiencing a lot of success, like your shirt there, Alice in Chains.
Yeah.
They were influenced by King's X. But for some reason, the King's X album, I mean, it did relatively well for them, but they never broke through as a big band, and they should have been. And honestly, I think by this point they already should have been huge. But that's a discussion for another ranking episode, which eventually we'll get to King's X. But that's what makes me so happy, is that we have bands that we've planned to do within the near future. And there's so many other ones that I'm excited to do. So I'm just like, man, we have so much stacked up that's going to be fun. That
we got content for years, dude.
Hell yeah. So yeah. My number 7 is King's X. It's just a fantastic album, and yeah, it had to go on here. So there you go.
Cool. So that brings me to my number 6.
All right.
Now, I think this is going to be probably the biggest deviation. The biggest difference is in us taste-wise, because this is a band that hasn't quite clicked with you over the years.
Okay.
But this album in particular is a fucking masterpiece of its genre. And I have gone for Images and Words by Dream Theater.
Okay. All right.
This is a staple of prog metal. Like, this is often regarded their opus.
This is the one that has Pull Me Under on it?
It is the one.
I know that song.
Yeah, it's got Pull Me Under, Another Day, Take the Time, Metropolis Part 1, The Miracle and the Sleeper. It's got Under a Glass Moon, Surrounded, Wait for Sleep, Learning to Live. It's only 8 songs, but it clocks in at almost an hour, as per prog.
Yeah.
But this album, Dream Theater often gets criticized for having, kind of wanky sections where it's, you're showing off like for the sake of it. But this album doesn't feel like that at all. Like, everything is there on purpose. And they're good songwriters too. Like, the parts on this album are insanely memorable. There's catchy moments, and there are like moments on it that stylistically I think I don't know if you've listened to this album all the way through
I have. It's
before.
been a long time though.
Yeah, see that's the thing. When I hear this album, I'm like, Pull Me Under is a classic. Another Day is an awesome ballad. And then you get Take the Time, which is kind of funky. And I love that each song has, again, that cohesive, you know that this is part of this overarching thing. But each song brings something to the table. You know, Pull Me Under is this epic opening track, Another Day, power ballad. Has like a saxophone in it. Love it. I love the fact that it goes from like Kenny G to like a fucking solo, and it's yeah. Take the Time, again, like I say. Surrounded is like super happy, like sounding. But Metropolis Part 1 is the real highlight of this whole record, because it's like every moment in this song is just masterfully crafted, and it's very much similar, because we're doing some prep work for a certain band.
Yeah. When I say prog, what do you think of?
Yeah. Yeah, a certain 4-letter band that begins with R that isn't Rat.
Rash.
Rash. Yes, Rash. They're a recent entry. And they do 20-minute prog opuses about different
Man,
STDs.
you're giving way too much away.
But yeah.
So my thoughts on Dream Theater though, I think out of all their albums, that's probably the only one I've heard, but it's been a very long time. Well, except for I did hear their most recent album, and so I don't know, I can't say anything about older Dream Theater, but I can say that, like, you know, if anybody watched the old Bollocks where we talked about the Dream Theater album that just came out, I talked about how the thing that bothers me about it is that prog means progressive, which means constantly moving forward and pushing boundaries is what I believe that prog is supposed to mean. But now Dream Theater and a lot of other bands like them, they no longer push boundaries. There's a prog checklist, and they don't do anything else except for what's on that fucking prog thing. Because if they don't do it, then we're no longer prog, which is the least progressive attitude you can fucking have. So
yeah, I would say Dream Theater has had kind of they have a core sound, and they do largely stick to it. But I will say, you listen to their albums and you can tell that you can kind of tell when they came out, because they are, again, they have that core kind of Dream Theater sound. But like, you listen to like one of their early 2000s albums and you can tell there's a little bit of that dirt, like new metal-ish kind of riffing. And then in recent years, you know, John Petrucci's added a few strings to his guitar, and they're playing kind of genty riffs every now and again. You know, I think that's cool, but I do understand, you know, knowing that they're such a, I mean, it's a vast discography at this stage, and they're known for pretty lengthy material. You know, eventually when we do get around to doing them, because I do want to take it on.
Sure.
It's going to be quite the journey. But yeah, I will say that the similarities between them and Rush are apparent at points to my ears.
Well,
so,
they're very much influenced by them.
Yeah. I'm just saying in terms of I mean, it's no secret that we're going to be talking about Rush pretty soon, now that we've you know kind of given it away. But
that's all right.
Yeah, I'm excited to take that on at some point. Maybe later this year.
Yeah, who knows when that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Are you done with your number 6?
Yeah. I'm all done.
Cool. Let's round out this best bottom half of 1992 with our first hip hop album, which
nice.
There was so much great hip hop happening around this time that something had to be included, and this is one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. Bizarre Ride to the Far Side by The Far Side. And if you know, you know. If you're a person that listens to hip hop, I'd probably say Bizarre Ride, and you're nodding your head. Yes, because it's fucking fantastic. It is a fantastic album. And there was a handful of bands that were doing this, I guess, for lack of a better term, alternative hip hop, where
Hmm.
they didn't quite fit in anywhere. They were goofy at times, they were experimental at times. De La Soul can be thrown into that camp. But the Far Side, this particular album is just so well done and takes you on a little journey and has these different elements, a little bit of jazziness here and there. There is some humorous parts. There's some songs that are just flat out amazingly well written hip hop songs. But the whole vibe, it just feels like you're at certain times you're just like hanging out in a room with these cool dudes making this badass music. And it's been a favorite of mine ever since it came out. Like it's just there's a friend of mine in high school who had that album on cassette, and he was like, dude, listen to this track, and he played me the song "Passing Me By" off of that, and I was just like, this is fucking amazing. And I immediately went to the record store and bought the album, my own cassette copy of the album, and
Nice.
and it's been a favorite of mine ever since. Like it was one of those, like when I first got a car and it only had a cassette player, but I didn't have very many cassettes. Like Bizarre Ride was one of the few that was a staple. Like if you're in my
Hmm.
car, there was a pretty good chance Bizarre Ride to the Far Side was probably playing in there. But yeah, one of my favorite hip hop albums, and so I had to include it. So that's my number six.
That's one I got to check out because I haven't heard it, and
They
I need to
they're
change that.
yeah, their album after this, which is called Lab Cab California, I believe is what it's called. I've never been able to. I always look at it and go, it makes my head hurt looking at that word. But that album's also really good. After
It sounds
that,
like my sort of
they're
thing.
they're kind of they lose some members and they lose a little bit of steam for their next, like I think they do two more albums after that. But the
Hmm.
first two, fantastic albums.
Chef's kiss.
All right, man. So not the but I this has been I it um
We got to put you back to factory settings.
yeah. All right. Yeah, the bottom half, no, top half, the top five. Our top five albums of 1992. I have a lozenge in my mouth. I'm sorry, everyone.
It's okay. I'll
Trying to
take
help with my
this.
throat a little bit.
I'll take this portion. So my number five, yeah,
Number
is where we're at.
five.
Number five. My number five is another underappreciated one. Set the World on Fire by Annihilator.
Wow. Okay.
I think this is a crazy underrated album with a lot of different kinds of songs on it. And it is the true definition of variety is the spice of life. And, I think while this is not a straight up thrash album, if you go into this expecting a straight up thrash album, you're setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if you're a fan of the early 90s thrash bands doing straight up just middle of the road, we can do whatever we want metal, and even some, I would consider melodic rock on this album,
Yeah.
because there are some killer songs on here that I feel don't get the credit they deserve because they're not quote unquote thrash. So without further ado, I mean, Set the World on Fire is a groove metal. This is also like the third album in a row where they have a different vocalist. So it's like it's real funny because like I think that the first album they had that guy Randy Rampage, like which is a killer thrash name, and
Also
he's the
sounds kind of like a porn name too, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere that he didn't go on tour with the band so he could keep his seniority at the dock works that he worked at or something like that. And then he
Wow.
came back to the band later on or something. I mean, I could be talking out of my ass. That's just like a random thing I remembered. And then they had another guy. I can't remember his name. I feel real bad. But like he had more of a melodic thing going on. And then Aaron Randall, I think, is the name of the vocalist on this album, and he's got like kind of a snarly but still kind of very 80s badass heavy metal kind of vibe. But it's, obviously 1992.
Yeah.
But then you get No Zone has some real thrashy parts in it. Bats in the Belfry, again, awesome. Snake in the Grass is a good fuck you, you're my ex song. And then Phoenix Rising, right? I am gonna die on this hill. Phoenix Rising is a fucking amazing opus of a song. Chromium Dioxide. This is where the feud begins. I will defend this album to the death because Phoenix Rising, incredibly written song. And then follow that up with Night Jumps Queen, super like catchy, if kind of goofy heavy metal song. It's still super fun. Sounds good to me. Now I will say, like, this is the point in the album where it's like, oh wow, they're really doing different stuff on here, because this is like it's just a really nice song. It's not heavy at all.
It's the difference between people that go to an album wanting it to be a genre, and then other people go to an album wanting good songs.
Yeah, that's how that's how I would describe this. That's how I would describe this album, is that it's got a real variety of stuff going on. But I think songwriting wise, they came into their own here.
Yeah.
The Edge. Now, the Edge is like, I love the fact that in 1992, like, this became an edgelord anthem. It's like, you learn it on the street, you can't learn it in school. It's the Edge, Don't Bother Me is very technical thrash. There's some insane guitar playing in this. Like, the riff in this, I can't wrap my head around. It's like, like, how many notes did you just get through in a second? But the thing I love is that not only on an album where you have kind of two power ballady kind of things, you could argue, you've also got Brain Dance, which is one of the closest things to a Mr. Bungle song from a non-Mr. Bungle band I have ever heard. Like, the lyrics are like a Ren and Stimpy cartoon, and there's a part in the middle where it goes absolutely insane. Like, out of the fire and into the frying and back in the pan again. He jumped out of the frying pan into the fire and he's back again. He's back. What? Yes, he's back and he's flying through the air. Like, what is happening? But yeah, also Dragon Force totally ripped off one of the riffs from this song to make Through the Fire and Flames. I will also stand by that.
I don't think anybody's trying to argue that Dragon Force is original.
I'm sure they're great guys, but that riff, there's no way,
Isn't the guy from Dragon Force the singer, the old singer? He's now the singer of Skid Row. Am I right?
Is he? I didn't know.
I think the original singer of Dragon Force is now the singer of Skid Row. I might be wrong about that, but I think I heard that.
I don't know. I got to catch up on Skid Row. I don't know what they're up to.
We'll get to them one day too.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I'm saying? So many cool things happening.
For sure. But yeah, this, in my opinion, grossly underrated record. It is.
It's. I gotta listen to this because when you talked about it before, I had the same reaction where I go, "This sounds like I would love this." And yeah,
you would.
And I'm so like not. The Annihilator stuff that I've heard, especially recently, is really turned me off to trying to listen to them back in the day. and just the fact that, like, Alice in Hell and Never Neverland are albums that have songs that I go, yeah, and other songs that I go, ugh. And so it just keeps me from really getting into them. But this sounds like one that I might really enjoy.
Dude, this album, if you liked The Ritual, if you liked Force of Habit,
I do.
if you like, obviously you like Countdown to Extinction, there is fun to be had here. And I know I sound like I'm trying to pitch this to you like it's like a conference or a business meeting.
That's all right. No, it's this is the all these things are things that make me want to listen to it. So I definitely will.
Yeah, like it's one of those, dude.
Or maybe I should wait till we do the Annihilator ranking in 2025. But there's so many bands we got to get through.
Yeah, I mean, this will be a long running show.
I mean, apparently,
no sign of us stopping. Not till we run out of
some
bands
people.
in years.
Some people will be very happy about that.
Hell yeah.
All right, my number 5. I'm gonna be real quick because you already talked about my number 5. My number 5 is "Vulgar Display of Power" by Panzera.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I'm showing my vinyl for the people on the podcast. I apologize. I don't really have a lot to add. Like, this album was one that came out, and I don't, to me, it wasn't like a game changer or anything. It was just an album where I was blown away at like how many memorable parts there already were listening to it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like metal earworms in this album.
Yeah, for sure.
The first time I heard it, like, I left the house and still had shit from the album like in my head, and I'm like, that's something great about that. And it's just been a favorite of mine ever since then. And I like the middle ground of heavy, almost hardcore kind of shit with whatever they were doing, melodic stuff. I don't know.
I mean, they're kind of like, they're kind of like the early example of hardcore getting fused with metal. So that's, obviously Phil, I know this is more of an image thing, but Phil did the unthinkable and shaved his head,
and then later shaved Tommy Lee's head.
Yeah. Which is wild because he was like the big hair guy,
So yeah, I think it's an amazing metal album, and it never gets old, and it's banger central from beginning to end. Yeah. So but we'll talk about that album more when we get to our Pantera ranking, but it's my number 5 because I just think it's a fucking motherfucker of an album and I love it. Vulgar Display of Power. Moving on to number 4.
Okay, Miss Maggie, okay. So my number 4. Now my 4 and 3 are interchangeable any day of the week.
All right.
And this is kind of foreshadowing because they're very similar in vibe. But my number 4 is the album on my shirt.
Number 4?
Oh, I know, God. Right?
Okay. All right.
Like, number 4.
Dirt by Alice in Chains for people listening at home.
Yeah.
He's wearing an Alice in Chains Dirt shirt.
Dirt shirt, people. But yeah. I mean, what can I say? This is an absolute classic in the true sense of the word. Like, right the way through, this album is like weird left turn after weird left turn, but it works.
Yes.
And every song on here has one fuck yeah moment while also having this like dark, sad aura around it all at once. And it's like, listening to it now, knowing many years ago, I mean, God, Lane Staley would have died 20 years ago this year. So
was it 2002?
It was 2002. But like this album, you hear it in the words of a lot of the songs where he's low-key accepting his fate to an extent, but it's like it has a sad aura around it, but I can't help but feel, oh, these songs are amazing. Them Bones, Down That River, Rain When I Die, Down in a Hole, Sick Man, Rooster, Junk, oh, fucking Rooster, dude. Like, I was talking to my band about like, should we throw a cover in the set?
He's in a band.
I am in a band, and yeah, I'm in a band. I got all the chicks. Actually, no, they get passed up because I have no money. But but yeah, like, also, I know we've done an Alice in Chains two-parter. Go check that out too.
Very early on.
That was season 1. That was 2020, first year of the pandemic. Wow, how time is flying.
Yeah, things got so much better, didn't they?
A little bit, but Junkhead has what I believe to be one of the most beautiful guitar moments of all time, and it's that kind of guitar solo where it's just like the melody. Oh
yeah.
Like, whenever that comes on, I get this like gut punch feeling of, God damn,
it's great.
They were feeling some shit when they wrote this, but then it immediately hits you with that down, down, get down, down. And the album's really Sabbathy, but it's also very alternative and grungy.
Yeah.
So when it hits you with a riff, it's like, fuck, you can hear the Iommi running through it. But it also has this like weird alternative off-kilter vibe a lot of the time, especially in songs like Godsmack and Sick Man, where it's like, this sounds, it's kind of like how Primus will write something that any other band playing it would just sound wrong.
Yeah.
But when they do it, they know what they're doing with it, and it builds tension and builds up to these releases,
Yeah, I think a song like Sick Man, if it had come out like in the 70s, it would have been considered psychedelic, the style of that song.
That's the thing. This album is almost like a 70s album with a late 80s, early 90s production on it.
Sure.
It's still very big, it's spacious. Like Angry Chair really plays with that. It's still very reverberant.
Yeah.
But I just want to say here, right? Would top 10 greatest songs of all time.
I agree. It is also one of my favorite songs of all time.
Yeah, like, even though Facelift vibe wise is my preferred album,
yeah,
Dirt, the margin between my love for the two albums is like a 0.0001 decimal.
Yeah,
like, I can binge the first 4 Alice in Chains albums, Sap, Jar of Flies, and the 2 LPs back to back, all in one sitting and not get tired. I would say to an extent also the 3rd LP, but I'd have to be in the right mood to kind of keep going.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love that album, but for different reasons. But holy shit, Dirt is just such an incredible record.
Yeah.
And it just so happens to be that I'm in a certain mood right now that it's not number 3. But on any day of the week, that can flip. So this list is subject to change.
To be honest, I expected it to be at least number 2. So that's this is interesting. So my number 4, probably out of all of these albums, I would say this is the most influential to me as a guy that started playing guitar and started writing songs and being in bands. Because I still find myself ripping off elements of this album even today when I try to write songs. My number 4 is Meantime by Helmet.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing album. It's such an amazingly well-produced album, well-played album. It's just a groove that never fucking quits on that album.
Oh.
And I love it. It was a huge deal. We did the Helmet discography where I got really mad at Winona Ryder. um, but yeah, Meantime is just one of those albums that, not only do I love it, but it's played such an important role. Like I'd put, it up there with like Nevermind as albums that influenced me musically, like the things that come out of me when I want to make music. Because whenever I sit down to write a song, it doesn't come out sounding like Metallica or Anthrax. And I don't know why. It's probably because I can't play guitar that well, but but there's certain bands that just somehow seeped into me, and they've kind of become the bands that informed who I am as a songwriter. And Helmet is just an important band, and Meantime is my favorite Helmet album. And so yeah, I mean, I can't say much more about Meantime. It's one of those albums that, I think a lot of people know it, but I think some people might not. And if you don't, like, just do it. It's not very long. It's like not even 40 minutes, I don't think. But it's
pretty brief.
It gives you a lot to chew on for being such a brief album. And it's that's the thing. A lot of these albums we're talking about don't sound 30 years old. It's like that. I talked on another episode about talking to my daughter where I played her some Beatles, and she's like, this music sounds really old. And I was like, well, it is really old. You're talking over 50 years or whatever. And I was like, so how old do you think the Nirvana songs I play are? And she's like, I don't know, 10 years. So that says something about that like to younger kids, like hearing this stuff, like the production value of a lot of these albums
holds up.
It still holds up. And I think the albums like Meantime, they still just sound so fucking good. So yeah, that is my numero cuatro.
I was going to say as well, I think bands that have a particularly stripped back aesthetic really thrived in the long run with the early 90s albums, because like they really hit a way to make things sound big and thick without it being brick walled to fuck. And you can still make it sound like it's just dudes playing in a room, but it sounds so authentic. And that's what I love about Meantime and Helmet's 90s work.
Which is funny because a lot of these are albums, especially, Meantime is one, but it's like at a certain point, people were calling those albums overproduced. And I'm just like, look, just because it's not compressed all to fuck, and like and sucked all the reverb out of the room, like what do you want it to sound like they're playing in a closet? Like, sure, I guess if you want, but it's in a studio, it's going to have some element of production. But yeah, I mean, the term overproduced to me is already kind of funny, because it's just like, well, it's a fucking recording. It's a recording of an album. It's not a live performance. So
listen to a fucking bootleg recorded in someone's like suit jacket. I
almost feel like the term overproduced is like terms that people that want to sound like they know what they're talking about will throw around.
Really nitpicking the stuff to
and they barely listen to any music at all, but when somebody brings up an album, like, oh, by the way, that's very overproduced. I mentioned that my favorite film is Citizen Kane. They're just really fucking boring people.
The glasses push really completed that. That was fucking incredible.
Would you like to come back to my house, because I have many jazz albums on LP?
Oh God.
Oh yeah, which ones do you have? I don't remember. I just bought some.
This is a very exclusive club. So exclusive, nobody is allowed in.
So on to your. Oh God, we're on top 3 now.
Yep, bronze medal.
All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that I know what your number 1 is, but I'm really concerned about your 2 and 3 placement now, because you already blew out what I thought was going to be your number 2.
Here's the thing, right? And I know some grunge purists are going to really chew me out for this one, but my number 3, because of its personal significance to me, just barely beat out Dirt. Core by Stone Temple Pilots, my number 3.
Yeah, I had a feeling
It,
this would be on here.
this is one of the most unfairly shit on debuts in rock history. Like, labeled as a Pearl Jam knockoff, they were the band it was cool to hate on. But that being said, Core is a fantastic grunge album, and I don't care
It's
what.
I think even in opinion, it's aged well. I don't think it gets
Yeah,
as much hate as it did at the time.
yeah, that was just like a sensationalized thing by the music press, and people are always so quick to jump on bandwagons, like we said with Saigon Kick and Extreme
Yeah.
getting kind of.
Well, it's also that thing where people seem to forget that like a lot of these most I would say 99% of the bands were actual bands with actual people who got together who wanted to play music and started in clubs. And
Yeah,
whether or not their trajectory was really quickly or they played for years and then blew up with a really huge album, they were still legitimate bands. And so the
yeah,
fact that so many bands were looked upon like, oh, it's just a corporate machine churning out same sound alike
yeah,
bands. I'm like, well, the bands may sound alike, but they're actual bands.
yeah.
Like,
Have you considered that's like saying everyone's an AC/DC ripoff for playing power chords? That's
yeah,
like, yeah, it's like one of the most redundant fucking arguments in history. It's just
yeah.
like, this band sounds like this band, so it's a ripoff. And it's like that's like calling every other thrash band a Discharge ripoff for using the D beat. You know,
Yeah.
it's
It's
you
so
know it's
it's kind it goes along with like it just made me think of this that a lot of people like that Greta Van Fleet band, and I don't particularly care for them, but my issue with them has never been with them. So like people complained that they sounded like Led Zeppelin ripoffs, which a lot of I don't know about their newest record because I haven't heard it, but there's a lot of shit that I'm like, woo, man, you were really like copying off someone else's homework here. But that's not what bothered me, because if that's what you want to do, because it already happened before. Wasn't the band called Kingdom Come? Isn't that what they were called? There's already been bands that did it. So I don't care about that. If that's what you want to do as a band, you're a real band of real people, boom, do it.
Mhm.
The thing that I hated was dudes that were all my age were like, finally, some great rock and roll music is back. And I'm just like, fuck you. Because there's legit really good shit out there, but they pick the one thing that sounds identical to shit that's already come out to be like, this is rock and roll is back. I don't know. Anyway,
That's a new character we need to add to the thing. We've both got grumpy boomer characters now. We
yeah.
need we need to call them something like the Swanson brothers or something.
I mean, like it is the same. It's all these people that I talk about. They're all that guy. It's like the Greta Van Fleet's great. Why do they gotta have hip hop at the Super Bowl? It's like
anything that came out after 1973 is invalid. It's all a fucking Rolling Stones ripoff.
Your guy is a little bit older than mine.
Yeah. I think mine's like angrier, but somehow less intelligent than a caveman.
I think mine's informed by the fact that a lot of these people are my age. And so it's so weird to be, I'm almost 44. Next month I'll be 44. And it's so weird to like see people that are my age. And I look at them and go, these are old people. Like, why do they act this way? Why do they look this way? Why do they carry themselves that way? What did the fuck happen? Like, so I feel like something happened to me where I stopped at around 28, I guess. I guess I stopped mentally growing. I don't fucking know. You could say that I haven't really grown since then, but it's just weird to see these people that are like, it hurts. It bothers me because I'm all like, no, we're supposed to be a generation of people that were like better than the generation before. Yeah. We're going to be better and more open and more, badass, but it's just the same old shit.
You've become the very force you swore to destroy.
Yeah. So that's why this shit bothers me more than anything, because it's like, these are my contemporaries and they might as well be dead already.
Dead and bloated.
Bam. Back to core. I'm sorry about that.
Segue. So yeah, I mean, this album starts off with a real sludgy, groovy edge to it. I love Dead and Bloated. I love how big and cerebral it sounds when it opens up, but it's still very groovy and
Yeah.
basic. But it has this way of really exploding with the whoa, yeah, yeah, and then comes back in. But I just love how it just goes boom,
Yeah.
and then the vocals on this album can be really soaring at points, and then they'll like whoop, come back into a groove, and then just bang, ring out a chord or something.
You sound like that surfer guy. And then I was like,
Yeah.
oh, blah.
Yeah. Is that Kai dude? I think his name was, where he was like, he was in this like hitchhiking incident where some dude tried to kill him, and I was just like, I grabbed my fucking hatchet, bro, and just started hitting him in the fucking head.
I don't think it's
like,
the same guy, but I mean,
No.
similar dudes.
Yeah, that dude's in
All
that
descendants
dude's in
of
jail.
Spicoli.
Like, oh man, did you ever hear about that dude? While I'm on it, I know this is another tangent. I know we're running a little long.
Did
you hear about
we're
that?
Fine.
The I think his name is Kai, the like dreadlocked hippie hitchhiker dude, where he gets interviewed on the news, and he's like, I just grabbed my hatchet, and I'm like, oh, just like take this guy out because he's like threatening everybody's lives here or something. But like apparently he got into another hitchhiking incident where someone recognized him, took him back to his place, drugged him, tried to. I know this is a tricky word for YouTube, so I'll spell it RAP.
Okay. Yeah.
The guy, and yeah, essentially he managed to fight him off, ended up killing the guy, and now he's in jail because he killed this dude that tried to R-word him.
Maybe he well, I guess he's stopping for now, but I'm like, maybe don't hitchhike anymore.
Yeah, but it just like that's one of those like life stories where it's like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
I can't begin to imagine like the stress of all that shit. Hitchhiking stresses me the fuck out. Don't do it. But yeah,
I hate being in other people's cars.
Yeah,
because other people's cars are gross most of the time.
Yeah, as someone who used to be in other people's car guy, I was that dude who had like a disgusting car. I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
But there was a point with my old car, the aforementioned Vauxhall Corsa, that was eating itself from the inside out, basically. I got a funny car story. I parked on a hill. Said hill was like a 90 fucking degree hill. Like it was like parking on a wall.
Yeah.
And my friend was parked in front of me, and we both had left their place. He's parked facing me in front of me on this hill. I'm looking up at him. Pretty much it was like the cockpit of like a spaceship, looking up at the guy. I've got my foot on the brake. Now bearing in mind, you know, it's more normal over here to have manual, a stick shift sort of setup. So hill starts are a little bit trickier because you got to really ease off on the clutch and get that bite without stalling the car. Bearing in mind, I'd already replaced the oil filter on this thing 3 times within a 12-month period because it just kept exploding. All right, I'm looking my friend dead in the face, smiling at him like, see you in class, and then all of a sudden, ping! I grab the fucking handbrake and it comes off in my hand. The whole thing is just off, and they're looking at me like, "Where are you going?" And it's like, I can't get out until you go. I'm like, pull this thing up and pointing to it, and they're like, "Oh shit!" And I couldn't, in all good conscience, leave that thing parked anywhere but somewhere flat. So I took it down to the bottom of the hill, and needless to say, I didn't go to class that day because my car had shit the bed for like the 4th time that month.
Yeah.
In the end, I ended up getting a new car, and I'm not going to dox myself by saying what it is. It's badass.
I mean, it's new. Who cares?
It's new-ish.
Well,
but yeah,
new to you.
new to me. If I haven't seen it, it's new to me. So yeah. With that, back to core.
Core, yeah.
Yep. Done and bloated, sex type thing, Wicked Garden. No memory. So I'm trying to get as much out of the way before I go on another tangent, but this album is one of those albums again where the vibe is so cool throughout. And it's got this weirdly big, heavy psychedelic groove that they don't really have throughout the rest of their other albums. Even though I like other albums they never did core
Yeah.
again, barring like a few moments on future releases, which makes this album special to me. But right from the beginning to the end, like Where the River Goes, this is just like a stick it on and vibe for like an hour album, because it takes you to so many different places, but it still has that chimey, clean guitar over heavy riffs thing that I love from this era.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I said, any day of the week it could swap with Dirt for third place. Right now I'm in more of a core mood, could be in a Dirt mood. But yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna get off this album, let you talk about your number 3.
It's a great album. So my top 3, legitimately to me, these are 3 of the best albums ever made in music, period. There because like there are things that I clearly know are personal preference. These are 3 albums that if you came to me and be like, oh, album's not really that, I'd be like, I'm not even talking to you anymore because you're literally a waste of my time. My number 3, Check Your Head by the Beastie Boys.
Nice.
This is the best Beastie Boys album.
Ooh.
And this album has such a history with me. I think out of all of these, no, my number 1 also. Because some of these, like, because 1992 was the year that I finished 8th grade and went into 9th grade. I believe that was 1992. And so these are albums that like are middle school discoveries. And I just remember I was already into the Beastie Boys, and the video for So What You Want came on MTV one morning before school. And I was just like, this is amazing. And to me, it was like nothing I'd ever heard before, because it's like hip hop with distorted vocals. And I was just like, that's really weird. Why would they do that? But, very quickly went to go get the album Check Your Head. And Check Your Head is just like a lot of the albums we talked about from this year, playing by nobody's rules. It's the first album where like they all picked up their own instruments. The majority of the music is made by them. And it goes from everything. There's a fucking punk rock song on it. There's more funky kind of stuff. There's straight up sort of hip hop kind of things. But it's just the most, it really, to me, establishes the Beastie Boys as an amazing group, period. Like not just like hip hop, because clearly they did License to Ill, which is a fun album and very cool. Paul's Boutique, which is a hip hop classic. But this one, I believe they just finally were like, let's just do what comes to us naturally. And it ended up being like one of the most like interesting albums. And I still get such a kick out of the whole fucking thing. But it is one of the best albums ever made. And it's my number 3. And it's, God damn it, so it's really good. Eventually we'll do the Beastie Boys. That one's not one I think that's in our recent plans or upcoming plans. One of those words.
We'll get around to them.
We will, because they have it's not a very big discography, but they have all sorts of great shit. But to me, Check Your Head is the best. So that's my number 3.
Cool. So my number 2, we have already talked about it, so I won't camp out here too long.
Okay.
But my number 2 is America's Least Wanted. by Ugly Kid Joe.
All right.
And this is the absolute embodiment of what I adore about the early 90s rock and metal era, because it's this healthy mixture of grunge aesthetic and kick-ass hard rock. You know, I affectionately refer to it as Wayne's World music. A, because everything about you is literally in the movie, but B, because it could be enjoyed by fans of both grunge and metal and alternative. You know, again, like I say, I would also lump Saigon Kick into the same kind of zone, because they have that vibe where, yeah, you can tell when it came out, but they aren't playing by any rules. They like what they're hearing and they're just doing it because they know how to make good music. A defining album of my teen years. Like, when I hear this album, I'm immediately taken back to when I'm like 14, first hearing this, like, all the way through, and just thinking, my God, every song here, like, oh, even like the album's deepest cuts, when I hear them, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll keep trying. And that, like, or same side, but there's just something, especially we did do an Ugly Kid Joe ranking, by the way, if you are so
I think
inclined.
that was like episode 3 or some shit.
It was early on. I think it was like 2 months into us doing this or something.
It was pretty early on.
Yeah, we made a conscious effort early on to cover some wide ground.
Yeah,
but yeah, this is a killer album, and anyone who hasn't heard this album or has only heard the hits is doing themselves a disservice, because this is a wildly enjoyable listen. And it is probably the most 1992 album ever made. Like, and that's what I love about it.
It really, to me, it really is an album that sounds that feels like how I felt about music when I was 13 years old. Very, yeah, it's just open to whatever. And I like that about them. I already talked about that album. And we already also talked about this album. My number 2 album is Dirt by Alice in Chains.
Nice.
Which I can't, we talked about it enough. It's fantastic. Classic album, one of the best albums ever made.
Fan dabby dozy.
Yeah. I don't yeah, it's really an album that it's yeah, like I said, these top 3 are just like, I don't even know what to say about them anymore, because they've lived with me for such a long time, and they're albums that to me are beyond great. Like, there are albums that are great, and then there's beyond great, where it's just like, I wouldn't change a damn thing about that. Although the one thing I would change is that originally, when the album came out, we probably talked about this on our ranking, Down in a Hole was the next to last song on the album. And I like that running order a lot more, because it really kills the momentum with Down in a Hole being number 4. But I guess that's because Down in a Hole became a hit, and then they decided to move the song up in the playlist. But that's the shit when I'd be like, corporate rock and roll bullshit. Yeah. What do you think? We can't make it through a whole album to hear the song? It's a fucking CD. You can skip to it.
Are we just gonna paint the fucking Mona Lisa yellow so it's easier to spot? You know.
Anyway, but I don't know the reasoning for that. But yeah, Dirt's amazing. It's just I don't even like to refer to it as a grunge album, because it doesn't. It's a
transcendent album.
It really is. Like, it's an album that it defies categorization to me, because it does have grungy elements, but like you said, there's a lot of different things going on, and I think that's probably why a lot of people feel very differently about Alice in Chains than they do about other quote unquote grunge bands. But speaking of albums that defy categorization, I thought I knew what your number 1 is, and now I absolutely know what your number 1 is, and it's also my number 1. So let's just go ahead.
Oh shit!
If you bring up a totally different album, I'm gonna feel really stupid. But also, if you don't bring up this album, I'm gonna be like, Eddie, do we need to talk? So
are you okay, buddy?
Go ahead, and let's go to our number 1.
Faith No More, Angel Dust. Hell yeah. Best album ever made, people.
Yep.
Hands down.
And this is a really great version of the album too that does not have Easy on it.
Oh.
It ends with Midnight Cowboy the way it's supposed to. Actually, I'm lying. I'm lying because this version actually does have a secret track, which is Easy on this. This is the music on vinyl version, which that's like that. Actually, even the Alice in Chains Dirt is a music on vinyl repressing because those guys, they do amazing repressings. And everyone knows how I feel about repressings. I fucking hate them. And I only buy them for albums that I can't find otherwise or they're too damn expensive. But if they come out and it has that MOV logo on it, I'm all like, there's a 9 out of 10 chance that this is going to be a fucking quality release. Because not only do they're very sturdy and very well made, but they recreate everything exactly as it was on the original vinyl, down to the label on the record. So
that's awesome.
So yeah. Anyway, if Faith No More, Angel Dust is our joint number one from 1992. I'll let you start off with it.
I mean, holy shit, dude! Like this album, like it took everything great about Faith No More and added Patton's insanity into the writing process.
Yeah,
and created this absolute opus of an album to the point where I don't think there is a single moment on this record lower than a 10 out of 10.
that's why it was so hard when we did the Grooved and Removed and we had to take a song out of this album. I'm all like, no, that's really tough.
But like, here's the thing, and here is probably the biggest generational divide between the two of us. And I know what you're going to say. Original track order didn't include Easy. But for me, Easy was always there.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing. The way the album runs, I love that it closes out technically with Midnight Cowboy.
Yeah.
But Easy is this like kind of comforting after the credits scene where everything's okay, you know? Because it's a roller coaster of an album.
So I think probably also I have a little bit, I like their cover of Easy, but it's always really annoyed me because they leave out an entire verse of the song. And I'm just like,
true.
Why even bother to do it? Because like, I love that second verse because the second verse has the everybody wants me to be who they want me to be. It's just such a fucking, it's a great song. So I'm like, just do the other verse. How hard is that? It's repeating the same shit. Patton can sing it. Anyway.
That's the thing as well. I want to point it out, and this is like how nerdy I am about this album. I actually prefer like the version a lot of people know from the video, and I think from the EP, is the cooler version where it's got all of the horns and strings and stuff in it. I prefer the stripped back version they just have on Angel Dust, where it's like just the band with the piano and more stripped back. It kind of feels like they're packing down after playing the album to you in this weird black and blue dark space.
Yeah.
There's an unbridled creativity to this album that I don't think anything can top in terms of just sheer originality and you know, musicians A being at the top of their game, B being complete weirdos that don't sound like anyone else, and you know, thirdly, making every song on the album just a banger that is so chock full of information that, you know, 10 years on, I'm still hearing samples for the first time that I never noticed before. Because some of the parts on this album are so jam-packed with like subliminal musical things. Like the breakdown, the kind of dancey breakdown in A Small Victory, only just realized there's a cash register in that, like in the last few years. Like what? And if you look at the track list, like the first song I heard from it was Midlife Crisis on the Radio X radio station in GTA San Andreas. Also, I want this noted. How many songs in my list are in that game? Killing in the Name, Them Bones, Plush, and Midlife Crisis. So this list right here has 4 tracks that appeared in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, which were hugely important to my musical development. And this album, I mean, we talked about it extensively on the Faith No More episode, if you want to go check that one out. But yeah, this album, holy shit. Land of Sunshine, Caffeine, Midlife Crisis, RV. Like, there's so many. Something I love about this album is the fact that Mike Patton writes these soundtracks, or the band writes soundtracks, and he comes up with a character to base a story around. RV is this white trash kind of guy. Malpractice, I believe, is about, cosmetic surgery that goes like horribly wrong. Be Aggressive is about, man on man oral, which was technically written by Roddy, but how cool is that in an era,
and now Roddy has a group called Man on Man.
Yeah. I'm all for it. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
But like, even like on the Grooved and Removed episode where I decided to remove Crack Hitler, that was a gun to my head scenario, and that's
same with based. Me. I chose Kindergarten, but that was also I got to pick something. So,
and like, I fucking love Kindergarten so much. Like, of all the songs on the album, this one is the one where I picture the artwork the most.
Yeah,
and there's just something about how airy it sounds and how it feels like you're kind of floating.
Yeah,
like this album is an experience, dude, and every song brings something new to the table, and I am astounded every single time at the sheer quality of not only the songwriting, but the boldness and the creativity of the entire thing. The fact that this is my favorite album of all time, hands down, and I still find new things in it that I didn't know were there, is a testament to just how genius this thing is. And I feel even more blessed that we have like 4 straight hours of uncut studio footage on YouTube of just them making it. And the fact that they're in that video recording a song that didn't make it to the album, didn't even make it to a special edition. Like, it's like a B-side floating out there. Not even a B-side. It's like an unfinished thing. Seagull Song it's called, if you want to check it out. But there's just
and they were and a lot of them weren't getting along with each other either at the time.
Yeah, which kind of like, it kind of bums me out that Jim didn't stick around. I do like the fact that King for a Day turned out the way it did, and obviously if they had to part to keep Faith No More going, something had to change. But it just cuts me to my core to think that Jim wasn't into this, because this has some of my favorite Jim moments, like and solos. But I suppose he preferred the more guitar oriented, upfront approach of the real thing, and that's fine. But Jim will always hold a special place in my heart, because he was always the misfit metalhead in the group that liked metal that much more than everybody else. And I always felt like that growing up, because like I was the metalhead in a group largely comprised of like not even music fans. Like my cousin was the only other like real rock guy in the group, so I had him.
I feel like to a certain extent in most of my life I felt like a Jim. Because I'm always the one that's kind of the uncool one. I mean, maybe not necessarily all the time, but there's been plenty of times in my life where I felt like this guy that I'm like, oh, everyone's kind of looking at me like I'm the one that's not as cool.
I like to think that I would have a like surreal lucid dream one day where I experience the weird naked Indian scene, but instead of Jim Morrison, it's Jim Martin.
Yeah.
Say, I from Wayne's World 2. I'd love that. That'd be so cool. Who are you? I'm Jim Martin. Who's that? A weird naked Indian. Just out in the fucking desert.
Yeah. Wayne's World turns 30 this year too.
Holy, oh, damn.
Yep. Actually turns 30 on Monday. Well, actually, it will be when you're watching and listening to this, the Monday that just passed, Valentine's Day.
Tomorrow?
Oh yeah,
Tomorrow, my favorite movie turns 30 years old, and I didn't know.
Well, I don't know when it came out in the UK, but in the US, it came out on February 14th.
I wasn't even fucking alive. I'm counting the original date.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway, back to Faith No More though.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about this album a lot already. But those of you who didn't hear the Faith No More podcast, go listen to it. But this album was super important to me because it opened my mind to a whole lot of shit, because I was into Faith No More already, but I remember getting this album when it came out and just listening to it a lot and just wrapping my head around everything. But even though it seemed like it was a little bit over my head at the time, it was there was something very compelling about it that made me keep listening to it over and over again. And it very quickly became a favorite.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just giving you the same old shit. So if you wanted them to do another song that sounded like Epic, you weren't going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just an amazing album and it is one that, like, it is interesting to hear people, after the fact be like, oh yeah, hugely influential album. Like, where the fuck were you when it came out?
Well, I think Kerrang magazine over here even called it the most influential album of the bands at the time, because it was like all new metal bands. I think this was like 2003 or something, so they were very quick to call Faith No More very influential.
Which is interesting, because if anything directly influenced new metal, it would be Epic and not anything off of Angel Dust. But
yeah, I know, it's strange, isn't it? Yeah,
I mean, maybe Korn could maybe you could take Korn and be like, I could see how they were influenced by both. But yeah, I mean that's another thing they don't want to have anything to do with, knowing that they have any kind of responsibility for new metal. But I me, I don't have any problem with some new metal. I have no problem with it. But yeah, I don't have a lot to add. It's one of my favorite albums ever. Ended up being my number one just because it's the one that, like, I look at it and I'm just like, God, this album is just fucking fantastic. And yeah, it's never become less fantastic to me. I still listen to it and go, man, if only I had 1/10 of the talent that those dudes had at, like, writing stuff. Then yeah. But yeah, unfortunately I don't. But
I doubt few mortals do.
That's true. That's very true. There's few albums that's why I said it's like hard to categorize, because that's why I would just, if somebody said, well, what is it? I'm like, it's a rock album. It's maybe you could throw once you get past that, you're just throwing tons of words on top of it.
Yeah, it's like what genre is this? You tell me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Faith No More rock.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's man, that's a hell of a fucking year to talk about. So you said you had honorable mentions.
I'll list them off quick.
Blow through them, because you might name a few that were in my honor. You already did. One of my honorable mentions was what the fuck did you say? There was one you did earlier. There was one of my honorable mentions. Oh, Rage Against the Machine was one of my honorable mentions. Almost made the top 10. But go ahead, list off some of your honorables.
Cool. So I picked the 15 that mean the most to me.
15.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly, like, I'm gonna do like one sentence for why I like it so much.
Okay.
Adrenalized by Def Leppard. It's
Okay.
basically Hysteria 2, but I love a lot of the songs on it.
Okay.
And I remember saying in the Def Leppard episode we did, go check that out.
Oh yeah, we did
Uh,
do a two-parter,
uh,
I believe.
two-parter on Def Leppard. I had a
Mm-hmm.
badass experience where I was driving to college and I came over the hill during that part in White Lightning where the guitar goes down 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 down. Came over the hill the moment the sun peeked over the horizon, and it was like something out of a fucking 80s action movie. I might as well
Nice.
have been in a helicopter, you know.
Just so you know, that was more than one sentence.
Yeah, that's a passionate moment.
Take your time, sir. We're not forcing anybody to stay here.
Okay, so Bricks Are Heavy, L7,
Okay.
killer all female grunge band, and this is one of their best records. Banger after banger, love it. Broken by Nine Inch Nails, the most metal thing they ever did.
Great, that's a great one. That one, it was easy for me to leave it off because I'm like, oh, that's an EP. I don't even have to think about Broken.
Dehumanizer by Black Sabbath, the technically final Dio fronted Sabbath album, if you're not counting the Heaven and Hell album, not Heaven and Hell, the Heaven and Hell band that they would do later on.
Yes.
Yeah. Killer album.
We also did Black Sabbath ranking. Go back and listen to those. I think that's a 3-parter.
That's a 3-parter. We did do that. That's going to be like the bulk of the episodes going forward. Is just us telling them to check out the other episodes.
Check out this other episode we did.
Yeah. Dog Eat Dog by Warrant, a prime example of
pretty underrated album too. I think it's a lot better than people talk about.
I consider it their finest moment. You know, it's a damn fine record. Incesticide by Nirvana is a B-sides and rarities collection.
So that would have been in my top 10 if I hadn't looked at it as a compilation. So because I love that album.
Meantime by Helmet. Need I say more? You covered that one.
I did.
Psalm 69 by Ministry. You know,
that's a good one.
It is, because it's one of those rule breaker albums where it's like, what the fuck, dude? I love this, you know?
Yeah.
This one almost took the 10 spot, and that's Push by Grunge Truck.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah, super underrated grunge album. Check that out. It's like the middle ground between Alice in Chains, Soundgarden, and Stone Temple Pilots. Revenge by Kiss. Yeah, awesome.
That's a great one.
Sap by Alice in Chains.
We also did a Kiss 3-parter. Go back and listen to it. And there are other videos that we did from Kiss around the same time where we weren't doing a visual thing, but I made visual videos of like the best bits from the episodes. And you know what? I put a lot of work into these things, and you motherfuckers don't even go and watch them and listen to them. So just go
listen right now. Sweet Oblivion by Screaming Trees.
All right, yeah.
Good grunge album. The Chronic by Dr. Dre. Another almost 10 spot. The Crimson Idol by Wasp. Concept album. Really cool stuff. And The Ritual by Testament, who we literally just talked about last time. So yeah.
So I didn't write mine down. You didn't mention the debut album by Body Count, which is
fuck. Yeah, I love that album, dude.
Fucking awesome album. I can't remember what else I left off. Like that's how much I didn't want to trouble myself with it, that I had this long ass list, and I put together my top 10, and then I just deleted I was like, delete that. I'm just like, I don't want to think about it anymore. Oh, the End of Silence by Rollins Band. That's another fucking amazing album that I had to leave off. But there's a lot. There's so much good shit from 1992. That's why I'm now doing a series of videos every month called 30 Years Ago This Month. And I talk about what happened that particular month 30 years ago. So if you're listening to this as a podcast, you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, you should go do it, because I do other videos too. And very soon, Mr. Edward Sparxx is going to be up and running again with his awesome ass shit on YouTube.
Back at it, people. We're getting the studio set up. We're getting the money in. We're gonna have some fine ass bitches up in here. We're gonna have a full on clout house in a minute, people. We are just gonna be on the grind, making killer content. Finally putting some music out there too that I've been sitting on for a long time. That
all right, this is gonna be a big year.
Yeah, it will. This will be 1992 to Electric Boogaloo.
Noise. Okay, I like that. On that note, let's sign off for this particular episode, because this is a long one, but some of you,
it's deserving.
Yeah, it's deserving, but also some of you, I think, don't mind our episodes being longer. But I think for the casual listener, this is probably a bit overkill.
It's okay. It drowns out the screams.
That's true. All right, so we'll sign off. That's our top 10s of 1992. Thank you for watching. Peanut Butter Platypus to all of you out there. I apologize for all of my horrible coughing and annoyingness in the beginning. It seems like that's kind of cleared up. And next time
lozenge was very effective.
And next time you hear me, I should be completely over my cold, and we should be good. And that's good, because we are going to be starting the ranking, an epic ranking of one of my favorite bands of all time. So get ready. I don't know. I really don't know what else to say. It's going to be fucking great. I'm really looking forward to it. And that starts next week. So thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Cranked and Ranked. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to my good friend Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
You're perfect. Yes, it's true. Love me later, dude.